Hello there, Alaskans, wherever you are. Welcome to the Must Read Alaska Show. Coming to you from somewhere in Alaska. This is the place where we talk about, you guessed it, Alaska. Where we keep the mainstream media on their toes and where we are standing up for what's right in a world run by leftists. You can find out more by heading over to mustreadalaska.com and also checking out the Must Read Alaska YouTube channel for some really great content. But first, let's get this party started.
Well, welcome everybody to the Must Read Alaska Show. This is a double show. So folks that have watched at 9 o'clock with Mayor Dial, you're in for a double treat. I'm your host, John Quick, coming to you from somewhere in Alaska. I am in the great metropolis of Hope, Alaska, one of the most cutest little towns in Alaska. It is such a cool place. If you and your family haven't been to Hope, Alaska, I want to encourage you to literally get in your van or truck or car the next time you have a free weekend and drive on over to Hope. It's right on the water. It's an old gold mining town. There's lots of there's a couple little things you can do. You can pan for gold. You can go through the gold mining museum. There's a really cool place right on the beach. You can kind of sit and chill by a river in a public park setting. There's a couple really great restaurants. The Dirty Skillet is one of my favorite restaurants in Alaska. So Hope is one of my family's favorites. We come here a couple times every summer and a couple times in the fall. And but I've got a treat for you today in our doubleheader. We have Representative Ron Gillham, and he represents Kenai Soldotna, and he's in his first term. And we just had some bit of some news for Kenai Soldotna, which tends to be a little bit more low key. We had a drag queen show that had kids in the audience in a public park setting with a kids park behind it. And so we're going to be talking a little bit about that in the middle of our show. But first, I want to welcome our guest, Representative Ron Gillham, to the show. Welcome, Ron.
Hey, thanks for having me on. But you say you're in Hope.
Oh, yeah.
So years ago, we used to go do bear baiting over there, and there was a restaurant. Of course, it was in the spring, and there was only one restaurant that was open. They had the best teriyaki mushroom burger I have ever eaten. And
nice.
We'd go over there a couple times just to have that hamburger, and could never catch them open again. I'm not sure if they're still there or not, but that was a treat. I'll tell you, that was, like I said, that was the best mushroom teriyaki burger I have ever eaten.
Well, the Dirty Skillet restaurant here in Hope they're like farm to table, and it's worth just to drive out to eat at that restaurant. They make one of my favorite desserts ever. They make homemade charcoal ice cream, which sounds really strange, but it's an awesome, unique treat to have. So welcome to the show, Ron. My first question to you is this: how did you first get involved in politics? I know that you and I knew each other a little bit before you got elected, and one of the things I appreciate about you and your current term is you've been the guy that says I'm not a politician, which is kind of unique. I think a lot of folks pride themselves, like we were talking about before we jumped on the show, to be politically correct at every single turn and be perfect in every single kind of PR or press release that gets put out. And you've kind of been proud in the fact that you're just a normal everyday Alaskan. So tell me a little bit about how you first got involved in the politics in the first place.
Well, it's kind of ironic that, say I'm not a politician, because I'm not. I'm who I am. And, but basically it started, I was on a slope and driving a truck one morning and listening to Michael Dukes. And he had one of our senators on, and they were talking about taking the dividend. And at that time, that was early on in when they were taking the dividend. And so I pulled over and I called him and talked to him. And the last thing he told me was, "Hey, what do you have to lose?" So, and I had never been involved in politics except for voting. I vote every time there's an election, I vote. But I had never been personally involved in it. And when he said, "What do you have to lose?" I thought, well, okay, somebody has to do it. So I got a hold of my family and told them, threw my hat in the ring, and and here I am. It was a shock. I mean, I ran against Peter Machicki the first time I ran for the Senate, and on election night I actually beat him, which was really a shock because at that time he was the most powerful senator in the state, and I'm sure it was a shock to him too. But then when the previous representative voted for himself and basically gave the House over to the Democratic side, my phone started ringing and they said, "You have to run against this guy." And I thought I was done. I really didn't want to do it. But my faith is pretty strong. And I started getting that push and I couldn't stop it. I didn't want to run, but I couldn't stop it. So I went ahead and registered. And unfortunately, it was a bad thing that Representative Knopp was killed in a plane crash. But
Yep.
But I've enjoyed being in Juneau. The people I work with are some of the best people that I have ever worked with in my life. They are straightforward, and but like I said, that's kind of the way I got into it was with a phone call to Michael Dukes, and I would
Nice.
tell anybody that if they're interested, like me, you don't have to be a politician. You can be a truck driver, teacher, whatever. If you're interested, put your name in that and do something. School board is very important. City council, borough, but anything. But yeah, if you're interested, do it. Like I was told, what do you have to lose?
So what are a couple things that that you love about the district that you represent, Kenai and Soldotna? What gets your kind of heart beating in the morning and excited to get up and do the job?
That's pretty simple. Years ago, my son and I were driving through town, and I wave at everybody. And we was going through town, and I'm waving, and my son looked at me and he said, "Is there anybody in town that you don't know?" And I said, "Not yet." So it's just the community. It's the people in this community. They're a tight knit people. Even the ones who only come up for the summer, they're wonderful, good people. So that's basically it. The businesses in town. I can go into Trustworthy. I can go into River and Sea. I can go into Safeway, any of the stores, and people know who I am and I know who they are. So it's a very, very close knit community, and that's what I like about it.
I like that. That's what I live out in Nikiski, and that's one of the things I like about Nikiski is it's a small town that's got very spread out, but it's a very tight knit community where folks have each other's back, and there's crime in there just like there is in any other town, but there's more positive than negatives. And I love living in Nikiski. It sounds like you really like living in the Kenai Soldotna area.
I've been here almost 40 years, and this is probably where I'll be buried.
Nice.
I don't plan on going anywhere else.
So you've been there 2 years, elected in the House of Representatives for the state of Alaska, or in the House for the state of Alaska. What are some of a couple of your accomplishments that you're proud of? I know it's tough to, a lot of times folks, we get a lot of messages on Must Read Alaska. Why haven't the Republicans done more? Why, and I think a lot of people don't realize and even maybe forget that the Republicans were in the minority this year, and they basically makes it so you can't really get much stuff done that you'd like to get done if you had the majority. So what are a couple things, even knowing that you were excited about that you got accomplished this last couple years?
Well, one of the things, even though we were a minority, there was enough of us that stuck together that there was some bad legislation that come across the floor, and we were able to stop it. There was income tax bills. There was gun registration bills or gun restriction bills. But some of the bills or some of the votes that were taken needed 27, and we didn't give it to them. So there's honestly, there's 14 of us that really, really stick together. Now, I guess we're going to find out here in the next day or two because the vetoes are supposed to be coming out from the governor, and we're going to find out how strong we actually are and see if any of the vetoes get overturned. But even though we're in the minority, we were still able to, like I said, stop a lot of the bad legislation. And then we were also able to help some of the good legislation get through.
Yeah.
There was the telehealth bill that I actually co-sponsored with a Democrat, representatives Ivy Sponholz, and the raw milk bill where you could sell raw milk products, and I signed on to that bill as well. So, but there were some good bills that came off the other side, and I've got quite a few bills that were introduced, but being in a minority, they didn't get read. So we go back next year, we'll be in a majority, and we will get to hear them bills.
So this last week, I don't know the exact date, but I know it was this last weekish. There was an event at Soldotna Creek Park that the city of Soldotna approved. Whether that's not the right language that they don't like or whatever, it's still the case that somebody filed to have an event at Soldotna Creek Park. Nobody's having an event at the Soldotna Creek Park without the city of Soldotna approving it. And so this event was approved to have in the middle of the day. Children were present. There's literally a kids park right behind it, middle of the day. It was not at the Wednesday market. It was a different day, but regardless, kids were there, and there was a drag queen show. What are your thoughts on that, Representative? Is that something that's appropriate that should happen at the Soldotna Creek Park in your mind every other week? Or is that something that should be kept, at an adult only kind of club?
What happened in the park was, to me, unacceptable. It was okayed by the city council. And as you know, the city manager said, well, it wasn't illegal, and got to doing some checking. And actually, I think it was. If you go to the Alaska statutes, Title 11, 1161 128, it's a distribution of indecent material to minors. One of the sections in there says that the material depicts actual or simulated conduct in a way that is patently offensive to the prevailing standards in the adult community as a whole with respect to what's suitable for persons under 16 years of age, except as provided in E of this section. Distribution of indecent material to minors is a Class C felony. So even though she said that she thought it wasn't illegal, I believe it was. And I think if somebody got a good attorney, that the state or the city of Soldotna would be in a world of hurt. But if Good Time Charlie's is legal, it's outside Soldotna, but it's inside in a closed up building. So if they want to do that, that's up to them. People want to take their 18-year-old kids and go to see that, that's up to them. But I have a 7, 8, and a 10-year-old and a 14-year-old grandchildren. It is not appropriate for them. And my son is always taking his kids to watch the shows at the park. They're family-friendly events. This was not family-friendly. So I spoke to my son, and he said things could have gotten really bad if he had been there. My son is a recon Marine. Not saying he's violent, but that was unacceptable. If the city thinks that's fine, then they need to look at their the way they view what they say is okay, and maybe do some changes on it. Maybe they need to vet these people a little bit more. If they're going to do this, put it in an indoor venue, not out in a family-friendly event, because that to me was unacceptable.
Yeah, and they have parameters for things that are just for adults. For example, when they have a beer garden, they rope it off and they make you have a bracelet and show a ticket, and they're not just handing beers out to 7-year-old kids. There's a process for an adult to get into the adult section of that event. And I think there should be a process for folks that want to hold adult style events and some sort of a vetting process to say, is this appropriate or not? And I would argue that it would be just as inappropriate if there was a strip club in the middle of the day at Soldotna Creek Park, and ladies stripping on the, right then and there. I would hold up red flags right then and there, the same way I would hold red flags up if there was a drag queen show in the middle of the day. It's just not appropriate in front of kids. And I think that the left just doesn't understand this. They don't understand why we can't just accept that as being normal. And that is the line in the sand that I will never go over. I don't care if you have your drag queen events and you are the best drag queen in the world and you do it with other adults and you guys have the best time in the world and you make money and you're the richest, most best drag queen in your own adult setting. I love it. Do it all day long. The second you do it in front of kids is wildly inappropriate. It is a sexual thing, and it has sexual connotations, and it will never be okay to do. And I don't think the left does not understand this. And this is one of the things that they're going to get annihilated in the next election cycle, because they're standing for things that the average American people do not stand for. There's $5, $6 gas. There's $7 a gallon of milk. There's drag queen shows and at libraries. These are things that the average American is saying, we've tried the left's way and we don't really like it. And I think there's going to be a huge sweep, and they just got to get some common sense back into their agenda. And I don't think it's ever going to happen, unfortunately. But what's your take, Ron, on how somebody could positively, respectfully make a difference about this event? You're a parent in Kenai or Soldotna, and maybe you're at the event, or maybe you heard about the event. What could somebody do to make their voice be heard about their opposition about this?
My suggestion would be call the city council, the city offices, and call the city manager, call the assembly members. Make that phone call and tell them that you're against it. This is unacceptable, and do whatever you have to do so that it doesn't happen again. But the people's voice is what counts. They are the ones that are in control, and they seem to have lost that idea that, oh, well, it really doesn't matter what I say. And that is so wrong. One person's voice is loud. So people should make that phone call the city offices and say, hey, this was unacceptable. Do whatever you have to do to not do this again. And during the next election, send them packing.
Yeah.
Get new people in there.
Do you think that the city manager owes the people of Soldotna an apology?
Yes, I do. I think she should be fired, and the city council can do that. She is hired and fired by the city council, and like I said, this statute could cost the city a lot of money, but it's just amazing that it got through the council to get to the stage, because there are some conservative people on that council. And how did they let it get through? Did they not get told about it? That's kind of crossed my mind a few times. Dave Carey, he is a strong Christian person, but how did it get past him? Did he not get told about it, what it was? And I don't understand.
My assumption is this, and I could be wrong. When I assume, I know that I'm probably wrong, at least over 50% of the time. But I think that what happens is they set the parameters as the council for what it looks like to rent the park. They set the fee structures. They have the ability to probably change that once a year during the budget cycle. And then they leave it up to the city manager to manage it. And so my guess is some of them probably weren't aware. The ones that were aware probably didn't want to tell the folks that were conservative, but essentially the majority of this responsibility lies flat with the city manager. And I've seen a response from the city manager. We've been forwarded a couple responses from folks that have written in, And it is put your nose up. I know better. I'm smarter. We're smarter. You don't know what you're talking about. It's very, very uh, kind of like a response you'd get from some politician in like San Francisco who thinks they're better than you. And uh, my advice to them would be just apologize. Take a slice of humble pie. Y'all messed up. Y'all basically had a strip club in the middle of the day when kids were present, and you just need to just man up and apologize to the folks of Soldotna and Kenai. It doesn't um, it doesn't bode well for you, any of you, long term, to not just man up and apologize. You need to admit when you've done something that's crossed the line. And this crossed the line. There's kids in the audience watching a strip show, essentially, and that's not okay in any setting. And I don't think we'll get any of that, Ron, but I still can hope for it.
Yeah, I agree. I think an apology would go a long ways, but what's done is done. We just make sure it doesn't happen again. And there's this sense of not offending anybody that has stepped in the way of morality. And you know what? That can't keep happening. Edmund Burke made the quote, the only thing necessary for triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing. And if think you're going to offend somebody, that's what happens. You don't do anything. And
Yep.
Another quote is silence is consent. It's time to speak up. Our country is it's in a turning point, and we are either going to have to take it back or we're going to lose it. So,
Yeah,
I mean,
you're
I'll
either
be
gonna
honest with you.
people are either going to stand up for kids who are having a strip show in front of them, or they're not. There's two sides. You're either on the side of having a full-on strip show in front of adolescent children, or you're on the side of that's not appropriate.
Yeah. So let me ask you this: if I said I mentioned Good Time Charlie's, which is a strip club. What if he filled out the permit, brought his strippers down there, and they wore the tassels and a G-string? Would that be okay?
Well, apparently to the city of Soldotna, that's all hands
Yeah.
on deck. They could have that event, and I'm surprised that Good Time Charlie's hasn't filled out the permit for the next 7 weekends because, I think it's $5 for the permit. It's probably cheaper to dance on the stage at the city of Soldotna's park than it is to have a full-time business. So he might be rethinking his business plan.
Yeah, I hope not. Don't give me any ideas.
Yeah. Well,
but yeah,
Ron,
to me that was unacceptable.
anything else where we went to a half an hour pretty quickly here? I want to give you the stage before we sign off here to talk about anything else you'd like to talk about that we missed out on, and the stage is yours.
I between now and the primary, I've been pretty quiet until this came up. I kind of got a little loud on this, but I'm accessible, and if anybody wants to talk to me, except for tomorrow, I have to go to Anchorage for a resource development committee meeting, but I'll be at the Wednesday market, and if anybody wants to talk to me, come and see me. I have Facebook page. I have actually 3 different ones. As long as Facebook doesn't shut them down, they've shut down 2 of them. But I am open to talk to anybody about anything, and I just wish more people would reach out and talk to me, because it
So
seems like it's the same ones.
If somebody's a constituent in your area, how does somebody get a hold of you? What's your office kind of generic phone number? Do you got an email you could share here?
My work phone is 907-252-3878, or they can send an email to Ronald_Gillham@yahoo.com.
Nice.
And I mean, I'll even come downtown and meet with you. I like to let people understand what's going on. And like I said, I'm not a politician, and I'm not afraid to tell them the truth.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Must Read Alaska show. And thanks everybody for tuning into the doubleheader. I'm John Quick, coming to you from somewhere in Alaska. And tomorrow we have the mayor of the Matsu Burrow on the Must Read Alaska show, which is going to be very exciting. She is a force to be reckoned with, and I'm told one of the nicest ladies in the world. And so I'm very excited to have her on the show. So until tomorrow, signing off from somewhere in Alaska, I'm John Quick, your host. Thank you so much for tuning in. And thank you to everybody who reads, supports, watches, and listens Must Read Alaska. Thank you, Ron, for joining us. I really appreciate it.
Well, thanks for having me, John.